The rain had turned the mountain road into a ribbon of mud when Elara Ven arrived at Blackpine, wearing a wedding dress she had never wanted. At 22, she had already learned that desperation could make any sacrifice seem reasonable. 3 months earlier, her father had died beneath a collapsed mining tunnel, leaving behind debts, unanswered questions, and a younger son whose heart condition required an operation the family could not afford. Then Orla Davin, the wealthy owner of much of Blackpine, had offered Elara a bargain. Marry Orla's 68-year-old brother, Garrick Davin, and the money for her brother's surgery would be paid immediately. Elara had hated the proposal. She had accepted anyway. Now, exhausted from the journey, she was led through the enormous Davin estate while thunder shook the windows. A servant hurried her down a dark corridor. "Your husband is waiting inside," the woman whispered before disappearing. Elara pushed open the nearest door. A man stood beside the window. He was young, tall, and dressed in black. Rainwater streaked the glass behind him, outlining his broad shoulders against the darkness. When he turned, Elara immediately knew she had entered the wrong room. This was not Garrick Davin. This was Cassian Vale, the ruthless billionaire CEO whose name dominated the country's business pages. His cold gaze moved from her veil to her trembling hands. "Who are you?" Elara stepped backward. "I'm sorry. I was looking for your husband." The question stopped her. Before she could answer, the door opened violently. Orla Davin stood there. The moment she saw Elara, fury twisted her face. "You!" Elara barely had time to react before Orla crossed the room and slapped her. The sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Elara's cheek burned. Cassian's expression changed. "Touch her again," he said quietly, "and you'll regret it." Orla stared at him. "You don't understand. This girl was supposed to marry my brother." Cassian looked at Elara. She lowered her eyes, ashamed despite having done nothing wrong. Then his attention shifted to the marriage documents clutched in her hand. Something about them made his expression harden. "Then explain this." He took the papers and studied them. Elara's stomach tightened. "What is it?" Cassian held up the contract. "Why is your marriage agreement bearing my private estate seal?" Orla suddenly went silent. Elara looked from one face to the other. A terrible realization began to form. She had not simply entered the wrong bridal room. Someone had arranged for her to enter this particular room. Someone had wanted her to meet Cassian Vale. And whatever that person intended, Elara had a feeling the truth would cost far more than her brother's surgery. Then a servant came running into the corridor, pale with terror. "Madam Orla." Orla turned. "Garrick Davin is missing." The room fell silent. Elara's fingers tightened around her wedding veil. Cassian slowly looked at her. For the first time that night, his suspicion was unmistakable. And Elara understood that the marriage she had agreed to could be the least dangerous part of what had brought her to Blackpine. By morning, the disappearance of Garrick Davin had transformed Elara from a desperate bride into the village's favorite suspect. Whispers followed her through the estate. Some claimed she had married Garrick for money. Others insisted she had entered Cassian Vale's room deliberately and that Garrick had vanished after discovering the betrayal. Elara wanted to scream that she had never even met the man she was supposed to marry, but every explanation sounded weaker than the accusation. Then someone threw a stone through the estate window. Elara flinched as glass scattered across the floor. A second stone struck the wall beside her. Before she could retreat, Cassian stepped in front of her. "Stay behind me." The crowd outside grew louder. Cassian walked toward the entrance with a composure that unsettled even Elara. He opened the door and faced the angry villagers alone. "Anyone who enters this property without permission," he said, "will answer to me." A man from the crowd shouted, "She killed Garrick." Cassian's gaze sharpened. "You have evidence?" The man fell silent. "Then leave." No one moved. Cassian took one step forward. They scattered. Elara stared at him. "You didn't have to do that." Cassian glanced at the broken window. "Apparently I did." His shoulder was bleeding. Elara noticed the small cut beneath his collar. "You were hit." "It's nothing." She reached for a clean cloth. Cassian immediately stiffened when she touched him. You don't need to. Stop moving. He stared at her. Elara carefully wiped the blood away. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Cassian quietly asked, Why did you agree to marry Garrick? Elara's hand stopped. My brother needs surgery. Something changed in Cassian's face. She told him everything. The debt, her father's death, the offer from Orla, and the promise that her brother's operation would be paid for. Cassian listened without interruption. When she finished, he asked, Did you ever meet Garrick? No. Did you know I would be here? Of course not. Then why did Orla send you to my room? I don't know. Cassian studied her. For the first time, Elara saw uncertainty behind his suspicion. That evening, he discovered something else. Elara's father had once worked for Vale Dominion. His name appeared in an old company archive connected to a mining project Cassian's family had acquired 15 years earlier. Cassian's expression darkened. My father died in that mine, Elara said. Cassian looked up. So did mine. Elara froze. Cassian had never spoken publicly about his father's death. But now their histories had collided. He opened an old file. Your father was accused of stealing company funds shortly before the collapse. Elara's eyes filled with disbelief. That's impossible. According to this, he disappeared with millions. My father couldn't even afford medicine. Cassian closed the file. Then someone lied. The words left both of them silent. That night, Elara found Cassian alone in the library, staring at an old photograph of a teenage boy. Your brother? She asked. Cassian's expression hardened. Lucian. What happened to him? He disappeared 15 years ago. Elara noticed the pain he tried to conceal. She sat beside him. You still look for him. Every day. For once, the ruthless CEO sounded like an ordinary man. Elara quietly placed a cup of tea beside him. Cassian looked at it. What is this? Tea. I know what tea is. Then drink it. A faint smile touched his mouth. It was the first time Elara had seen him look almost happy. But the fragile moment ended when Cassian's phone rang. His security chief spoke urgently. We found Garrick Davin's car. Cassian stood. Where? At the old mine. Elara's blood ran cold. Cassian looked at her. Neither of them needed to say what they were thinking. They drove through the storm together. At the abandoned mine, they found Garrick's vehicle overturned beside the entrance. The driver's door was open. Blood stained the seat. Elara covered her mouth. Cassian immediately pulled her behind him. Then they heard a faint sound from inside the darkness. A voice. Someone was alive. Cassian reached for his flashlight. Stay here. Elara grabbed his arm. I'm coming. Elara. If someone is hurt, I'm not leaving them. Cassian stared at her, then reluctantly nodded. Together, they entered the mine. They found Garrick barely conscious beneath fallen beams. But before they could reach him, a figure emerged from the darkness behind them. Elara turned. The stranger raised a gun. Cassian moved instantly, shielding her with his body. The gunman smiled. Mr. Vale, you finally brought us the girl. Elara's heart stopped. Cassian's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The stranger pointed the weapon at Elara. The person who knows why her father really died. And then the mine doors slammed shut behind them. The mine doors slammed shut behind them, trapping Elara, Cassian, and the wounded Garrick in darkness. The armed stranger kept his weapon trained on Elara. Cassian stepped closer to her. Who sent you? The man smiled. The same people who killed her father. Elara's breath caught. You're lying. Your father discovered that the mine collapse wasn't an accident. He found records proving that someone inside Vale Dominion had been selling company land through shell companies. When he threatened to expose them, they silenced him. Cassian's face became rigid. Who? The stranger's eyes shifted toward him. Your uncle. Cassian went still. Dorian Vale. The man who had raised him after his father's death. The man who had helped him build the empire. The man Cassian had trusted more than anyone. Before Cassian could respond, the stranger fired. Cassian lunged. The bullet struck the metal beam behind him. Elara screamed. Garrick, despite his injuries, grabbed a loose stone and hurled it at the gunman's wrist. The weapon fell. Cassian attacked immediately. The struggle was brutal and brief. When the stranger tried to reach for the gun again, Elara kicked it away. Cassian seized the man and forced him against the wall. Tell me everything. The stranger laughed. You think this ends with Dorian? A distant explosion shook the mine. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cassian released him and turned toward Elara. We have to get out. They reached Garrick, but he could barely stand. Without hesitation, Cassian lifted the older man onto his back. Elara stared at him. You'll hurt yourself. Cassian continued toward the exit. Then help me. Together, they crossed the collapsing tunnel. When they finally emerged into the rain, Elara looked back. The mine entrance collapsed behind them. The stranger was gone. So was the evidence. Or so they thought. At the hospital, Garrick survived. The moment he regained consciousness, Cassian confronted him. You knew. Garrick looked away. You knew my uncle was involved. I suspected. You knew Elara's father was innocent. I knew he was trying to expose corruption. Cassian's anger deepened. Why did you bring Elara into this? Garrick looked toward her. Because she was already in it. Elara stepped forward. What does that mean? Garrick's voice softened. Your father left something behind. He revealed a small key hidden beneath his hospital pillow. It opens a safety deposit box. Elara stared at it. Where? Garrick looked at Cassian. At the bank where your father kept his personal records. Cassian immediately understood. If Dorian learns about this. He already knows, Garrick interrupted. The room fell silent. That night, Cassian moved Elara into his private penthouse for protection. She hated the idea. I don't need a bodyguard. You need protection. I can protect myself. Cassian stared at her. You walked into a mine while a man pointed a gun at you. I was trying to save you. The words escaped before Elara could stop them. Cassian went quiet. His expression softened. Then he reached for her hand. That's exactly why I need to protect you. Neither of them moved. Elara could hear his heartbeat. For one fragile moment, the danger outside seemed distant. Cassian leaned closer. Then stopped. Tell me to leave. Elara looked into his eyes. Don't. He kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost uncertain, but the restraint between them quickly dissolved. When they finally pulled apart, Elara rested her forehead against his. This is a terrible time to fall in love. Cassian's lips curved faintly. Then we'll have to survive quickly. The next morning, they went to the bank. The key opened a private box containing a single envelope. Inside was a photograph. Elara's father stood beside a young man. Cassian took the photograph. His face drained of color. Elara stared at the stranger beside her father. Who is he? Cassian could barely speak. Lucian. His missing brother. On the back of the photograph, Elara found a handwritten message. If anything happens to me, find my son. He knows the truth. Cassian looked at her. Lucian isn't dead. Before they could leave, every light in the bank went out. A second later, the emergency alarm screamed. Cassian grabbed Elara's hand. Someone had entered the building. Then a voice came through the darkness. Mr. Vale. Cassian turned. A man stepped from the shadows. Older. Scarred. Alive. Elara recognized him immediately from the photograph. Lucian Vale looked directly at his brother. I've been waiting 15 years to tell you who really destroyed our family. Then he looked at Elara. And your father wasn't the only one they tried to kill. Lucian Vale stood beneath the flickering emergency light, his scarred face revealing 15 years of suffering that Cassian had never known existed. Cassian stared at his brother as though the world had shifted beneath his feet. You're alive. Lucian gave a bitter smile. Not because they wanted me to be. He explained everything. After their father's death, Lucian had discovered evidence that Dorian Vale had been manipulating the company from within. When Lucian tried to expose him, he was kidnapped and forced into hiding. Elara's father had helped him escape, then spent years gathering proof of Dorian's crimes. He was going to expose everything, Lucian said. That's why they killed him. Elara's eyes filled with tears. My father didn't die because of an accident. No, Lucian replied. He died protecting the truth. Cassian's grief turned into fury. For 15 years, he had blamed himself for failing to save his brother. He had believed his family had been destroyed by tragedy, never realizing that the person standing beside him at every board meeting had been responsible. But Dorian had anticipated their discovery. The bank's security doors suddenly locked. Men appeared at both entrances. Lucian grabbed Elara's arm. We have to move. Cassian fought their way through the attackers, but one man managed to seize Elara. She struggled fiercely. Let me go. The attacker dragged her toward the exit. Cassian saw her disappear behind the closing doors. Elara. He ran after her. A gunshot stopped him. The bullet struck the wall beside his head. By the time Cassian reached the street, the vehicle carrying Elara had vanished. For the first time since they met, Cassian was completely powerless. Then his phone rang. Dorian's voice came through. Bring me the evidence, or the girl dies. Cassian's hand tightened around the phone. If you hurt her, you'll do exactly as you're told. The call ended. Lucian grabbed Cassian's shoulder. Don't go alone. Cassian looked at him. I have to. No. That's what Dorian wants. Lucian revealed the final piece of their father's evidence. A hidden recording. Their father had anticipated his death and recorded a confession exposing Dorian's entire operation. But the recording contained something else. Dorian had ordered the mining collapse. And he had personally ordered the assassination of Elara's father. Cassian understood immediately. They couldn't simply rescue Elara. They had to destroy Dorian completely. Meanwhile, Elara was taken to an abandoned farmhouse outside Blackpine. Dorian entered the room. You've caused me considerable trouble. Elara's wrists were tied, but her eyes remained defiant. You killed my father. Dorian smiled. He was foolish enough to believe honesty mattered. Elara stared at him. You're wrong. She had spent her entire life believing kindness was weakness. Now she understood that kindness had brought people together against him. Garrick had protected her. Cassian had risked his empire for her. Lucian had returned from hiding to expose the truth. Dorian had power. They had something stronger. Each other. Elara secretly loosened the rope around her wrist. When Dorian turned away, she grabbed a broken piece of glass and cut herself free. She ran. Outside, Cassian arrived. The rescue became chaos. Dorian's men surrounded the farmhouse, but Cassian and Lucian fought through them. Cassian found Elara just as Dorian raised a gun. Elara moved first. She threw herself into Cassian. The shot missed. Lucian tackled Dorian. Moments later, police stormed the property. The evidence had already been transmitted to the authorities. Dorian's empire collapsed within days. Elara's father's name was cleared. The mining families received compensation. Garrick survived and confessed that he had deliberately arranged the original marriage to bring Elara and Cassian together, knowing Cassian would investigate the strange contract. Elara laughed when she heard. I was supposed to marry an old man. Garrick smiled. Instead, you found a stubborn one. Cassian frowned. I heard that. For the first time, Elara laughed without fear. Months later, Cassian returned to Blackpine with a ring. He found Elara outside the school they had built for children from struggling families. I have something to ask you. She looked at the ring. Is this another arranged marriage? No. Cassian knelt. This time, you can choose. Elara's eyes filled with tears. Cassian took her hand. You entered the wrong bridal room and somehow became the right person for my entire life. She smiled. That's a terrible proposal. Cassian looked alarmed. Elara leaned down and kissed him. But I'll accept it. 1 year later, they married in Blackpine. Garrick walked Elara down the aisle. Lucian stood beside Cassian. And when the ceremony ended, Cassian took Elara back to the room where their impossible story had begun. He closed the door and smiled. Do you remember? Elara laughed. Unfortunately. Cassian pulled her close. I don't. She looked at him. Why not? Because I don't remember it as the wrong room anymore. He kissed her forehead. I remember it as the room where I found you. Elara rested against him. Outside, the village celebrated beneath a sky finally free of storms. The girl who had entered a marriage to save her brother had gained something she had never dared to ask for: a family, a home, justice for her father, and a man who loved her without conditions. And the ruthless CEO who believed power could protect him from every wound finally learned the greatest truth of his life. Sometimes the most beautiful destiny begins with the wrong door. And sometimes, the greatest rescue is not being saved from danger. It is being rescued from a life without love.